Hey YouTube, are you guys ready for our next full garden tour? This is our 4th weekly tour of the summer of 2018, and I'm so excited to share with you all the work that we have gotten done since the last time you've seen the garden. Okay, so I'm totally one of those housekeepers that invites people over just so I can get my house clean. I love the motivation of having guests over in order to, you know, really get up and get at it. So 10,000 of you watched our last garden tour in the last 6 days. And so today we worked in this garden like 10,000 of you were about to come walk through it. Let's check out the new things that we've done. So first off, here is the outside of the garden. I started with our tires, which we have whitewashed. I've actually planted some flowers in there yet. They're not spilling over yet, but they will. We've got the first stage of these planters built, and now the garden is fully enclosed. And we started cleaning up this fence line. It's looking really good. And I've been waiting to do this since we started these tours. Let's go through the door. Before it just felt silly because it wasn't closed in. Okay. Here's the garden. Normally I do these videos in the morning. However, I decided today we would do it in the evening. Part of that was necessity. I had to go to the sale barn and sell baby goats this morning. But also I thought it would be nice to see the garden at a different time of day instead of just in the morning. Today I've got my roux apron and my hod. I have also brought out some plastic baggies because I am going to be saving some seeds today. Let's just walk through really quick. We've set up some more structures, and a lot of our in-ground garden is really starting to produce. This watermelon came back. That was a little crimson sweet watermelon we had planted, and my chickens had scratched up. It was barely a nub left. I don't even think it had hardly any leaf. It might have had like a piece of a leaf, but it has come back, which is nice. These sweet dumpling squash. Starting to get several in these. We took 2 pieces. This was actually a dog kennel. We've had it back in our, what the kids call the junkyard, just our scrap stuff in the back forever. And we took that, leaned it together, and made a little trellis teepee for these winter squashes to climb up. And we also put up a couple of random pieces of cattle panel here. For these Sibley and Gouda winter squashes, we just sort of kind of pointed them in that direction, and they will grab hold of that with their tendrils. This crimson sweet watermelon is doing really well. We've got 5 little baby melons here. They're looking good. This is pretty cool. This is something that I noticed when I was out here today, and I didn't know that this particular kind of melon did this. Now, this is a moon and stars melon, which you've ever seen that. They're a really dark green melon. They have little yellow spots, and sometimes usually have a big yellow spot, so that's where they get their name, moon and stars. But check that out. Their leaves have spots on them too. Isn't that neat? I didn't know that they would do that. Here is my first ripe tomato from my in-ground garden. It's not wanting to give it up. This is an orange ox heart. And I've got several more that are looking pretty big. If I'm being completely honest, my tomatoes in the beds have been way more cared for than these tomatoes. But still looks like they're going to be kind to me. I recently did a video kind of unpacking all of the tips that I know for growing tomatoes. In that, one of the things I shared is that it is best to harvest tomatoes in the afternoon, the hottest part of the day, or the evening, when your tomato plants are the driest, because that is when the fruits are going to be most concentrated in sugar. So I noticed several fruits today. I was waiting for this video to harvest them, and after that I will probably go ahead and water my plants tonight after I'm done harvesting all the fruit. I came through here today and picked up my melon plants and kind of redirected them back onto this black fabric so that we could weed eat this row and lay down some fresh straw. We just didn't get to that today. However, in doing so, I discovered that we have tons of melons. I mean, I found at least a dozen today. I'm really, really excited. There are all kinds. That's another Collective Farm Woman, which I have some of those hanging on a trellis. These are the Chantenais, I think is how you say it. I don't have my notebook here. But these are like a small honeydew type. Here is a bigger one. That'll be I think that's a Jubilee. Here are a couple more. These may be Crimson Sweets. Seriously, there's a bunch of them. I'm super pumped. I love watermelon. Watermelon may be one of the things that I enjoy growing the most. Now, everybody knows that I am a tomato fan. However, watermelon is probably a close second. So the ground cherries are doing well. Still, none of them have made it into the house because they're amazing. And so we generally just pick off all the ripe ones and sit here and eat them. We didn't tell the kids about them for like 2 weeks because then there would never be any. But since there's so many getting ripe now, we decided to stop being jerks about that. And I finally let the kids in on the secret just a couple of days ago. And I'm surprised there are any on this plant right now because they love them as much as I do. More melons. So this is a marrow white squash. And if you will recall, I told you that we just succession sow the winter or the summer squashes. That way when the bugs take them out, which they always inevitably do, we have another plant that is coming up right behind it and starting to put off fruit. This is my first time to actually harvest one of these. My patty pan squash over in the raised beds is still putting off fruit. It's really doing really well, but the rest of the summer squashes have been wiped out except for these 3 plants right here in that patty pan. Now I've got this one coming up. That will be kind of my next one to produce once these are petering out, and I'm about to start planting a couple more in the raised beds and spots that have opened up in the last week. Okay, here's another golden patty pan. I really like these. They have good flavor and they're just fun. Apparently I like them enough to plant 2 plants side by side here. Planting 2 of any kind of squash means you like it, because summer squash produces a lot. We eat it fresh. A lot of you gave the suggestion last week of dehydrating it, so I'm actually going to try that this week. I seem to recall that we did that once last year. I don't think I did a very good job because I remember nobody liking it, and I've had too many people suggest it for it to be bad. So I think I need to just try. I need to try to do something different. The corn is getting quite sizely. Some of them are falling over, so I'm gonna see if I can stand them up. But check that out. Pretty good. What's the old adage? Knee high by the 4th of July. I think whoever said that must not have been from the South, because there's a guy down the street and his corn is like 2 feet taller than me. We're actually going to weed eat in between our sunflowers down here the best we can, and then try to lay some straw down to mulch between them, just to kind of keep the grass down here. But look, starting to get a little head on some of these. I'm really hopeful that maybe by our next garden tour we'll have some open sunflowers down here on the end of this in-ground garden. Only a couple of the okra plants I put down here came up, and I haven't really pushed it. I don't know, I may try to sow something else here, I may not. Isn't it beautiful? Maya's over there helping his brother change the calipers on his truck. Sometimes I just want to show you my beautiful tomato rows. Make myself look like an awesome tomato gardener. and not show you things like that. At this point, this has just become an experiment. That is one tomato plant. There's the kind of middle of it. It's a white beauty tomato plant that I've literally not touched. There's a stake I put in there, but I didn't attach it to it. So it's just spilled over. And at this point, I'm just kind of curious what it's gonna do. Look at all its little nubbies. It's trying to grow more roots to support it. I mean, this thing's so heavy. It's got a bunch of fruit on it. I'm just gonna leave it alone. If ever in gardening you have something that just goes way awry, especially from neglect, just call it an experiment. It makes it okay. This end row of tomatoes, the plants are kind of starting to get pretty good size, so they'll be demanding a lot of attention here pretty soon and putting off some fruit. They were so far behind my other plants that I haven't really just paid them a whole lot of attention. This row is still so young because it was the last one, this bed was the last one that we built. So I haven't really touched on it a whole lot during the tours because there's just not been a whole lot growing there, but it'll catch up. It'll get some attention soon. I finally got all the baby goats out of my house and brought my trough back down here. Now, this trough serves a dual purpose. Our watering system sucks. I mean, we don't have one. We have hoses. And the plan has been for, you know, the entire season to fix our well, which is right across the front yard, and to run PVC pipe through the beds and all of that stuff. But the vision for that project is, it's bigger than our bank account. So it hasn't happened yet. And in the meantime, we've just been running hoses and watering this massive garden by hand. I know that sounds crazy. But the rain has been spaced out and heavy enough when it came. We haven't had to do just a ton of watering. And one of our solutions is that we keep this massive trough. This was one of the extra troughs that we had for our horses. We fill it up down here, and things like cucumbers and squash that need much more frequent watering, we just use buckets and watering cans and we water them out of this. It is kind of a pain, but it does work. And this serves the dual purpose as my babysitter when my kids are out here with me while I'm gardening. They just play in the trough because, you know, this is a farm and that's how we raise our kids. Okay, time to pick tomatoes. Up until this point, we haven't really had enough tomatoes that I've had to figure out, like, what am I gonna do with these? The other day, I think I probably picked about 8 pounds, which I sliced all of them and put them in the dehydrator. It was no big deal, but I'm pretty sure today's tomato harvest is going to demand some action. Here is another orange ox heart. I don't think I trust this up here. Not with my precious tomatoes. These are called Homestead. I actually thought these were going to be much larger when I planted them. That was what the description said, so I'm not sure if I got seeds that weren't right or what. They have pretty good flavor though. So here is a Caustralie and a very cat-faced black from Tula, which could possibly ripe for another day, but I do want to water. Oh dang, sorry black from Tula plant. There's another one, and these are Caspian pinks. Pull that off. These are all pretty cracked because we had a lot of rain a few days ago, and that's what it'll do. Here are some pink Berkeley tie-dyes, and this one got some pretty serious sun scald. The branch had fallen over and it was just kind of laid out, exposed to the sun. We'll probably just cut that part off and use the rest of it. I had this plant labeled as black creme, and I'll tell you right now that black creme it is not. Not sure what it is, but these look a whole lot like those tomatoes, those homestead tomatoes, so maybe some plants got mixed up. These are called Moneymaker. They've been doing pretty well, but they have cracked. Almost all of them have been pretty cracked, which again is not entirely their fault. We had a lot of rain, and even the best of them would crack in rain like that. Oh, I'm so excited about this. That is my first Brandywine of the year. Brandywines have amazing flavor, and this was my granddaddy's favorite tomato to grow. So he died whenever I was 23, and you know, my childhood memories, so much of it was going to my grandparents' house, and he always had tomatoes lined up on his kitchen counter. He would share his cherry tomatoes with me. It's kind of one of those things, like, I didn't ask him anything about it whenever he was still alive because, you know, I was too young to really care. I didn't get into gardening until after he was already gone. But I think about him a lot whenever I'm taking care of all of these, and I always think about him when I eat the Brandywines. Hey, these are pineapple striped, which is my first one. It doesn't look very striped, but I'll take it. That's another one. That one's got a little bit of a spot, but anytime you have an ugly spot or a yucky spot in a tomato, you can always just cut it away and use the rest of it. These are some Costoludo Genovese, and these are obviously quite cat-faced. Those are funny little things, but still very pretty. Okay, and here is a little one. Very fluted. I like these. I'm gonna need another basket. Here we have our Paul Robesons. Last week I showed you guys this plant and how it's getting a lot of blight underneath from not being pruned. As you can see, I've cleaned up all the bottom leaves. The whole plant is looking way better. I don't see really many more problem spots. You can catch early blight whenever the bottom leaves start to wilt by just removing any of the affected leaves. When you see yellow or wilting, it's best to go ahead and cut those branches off, break them off, and throw them away, and then don't touch all the rest of your healthy branches if you have that on your hands. And also don't put them in your compost. It's best to burn them, or you can just like give them to your chickens or whatever. That's what I usually do, is I'll just throw them over there. I'm not like super cautious about it, but I do break them off whenever I see it. Okay, a couple more back in here. And then this was the other Paul Robeson that I wasn't sure actually was a Paul Robeson because it's a lot smaller, more cracked fruit. Check out my sunflowers. These mammoth ones are just getting huge. I went ahead and skipped over here to the climbing triple crop tomatoes so that I could pick what was ready here. I knew this one would be. I'm gonna have to use two hands. Good night. Check that bad boy out. That is one big tomato. Pretty ugly too. It'll taste good. Now for the cherries. I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but I do like to pick all of the same kind of vegetable at once, because then I can already be thinking about what I'm gonna do with it when I get in the house. Because stuff like tomatoes, I mean, those will last on the counter for like a couple of days, but especially the ones with cracks, you kind of want to address them as quickly as possible so that none of them rot or, you know, spoil it all. All right, we have lots of cherry tomatoes ready, and I'm not complaining. These are the blueberries from Wild Boar Farm. have a real acidic flavor that I really, really, really enjoy. Okay, so I had it all worked out. I was going to do a really cool time lapse of me picking all the cherry tomatoes at the same time. However, I didn't account for the fact that I already had squash in my roux apron and that there are a lot of cherry tomatoes. I got halfway down the row and I've got to go empty my arms because I can't hold anymore. Look at this. Cherry tomato picking, take 2. Yeah, I just noticed something and I want to show it to you. Apparently an awesome cherry tomato picking time lapse just isn't in the stars for us today. However, I want to show you something. Okay, you see all of these unripe fruits that have fallen? There's some there. This plant is stressed pretty bad. Like you can see, well, you can see that it's got a lot of wilting and just overall yuckiness. That could be for a number of reasons. It could simply be that it's freaking hot. Today was 100 and it pretty much will be from now until, you know, the end of August. It's just hot. It's already hot here. We're in zone 7B, central Arkansas. It's hot. And tomatoes actually don't thrive over about 90 degrees. That's whenever you start seeing them drop their blossoms, drop their fruit, and that may be all it is. However, this plant in itself is looking kind of yucky, so I'm going to keep a close eye on this. This is a yellow pear. I'm surprised that it looks like this because generally if one is going to go out to sickness, it's usually not that one. But what I do, of course I have a lot of tomato plants, so this is just a personal preference, but what I do whenever a plant starts getting sick and like looking like it might have blight or something like that, I just rip it out. Because I have others and I would rather rip out and lose one than lose a lot of them. Aren't these little spoon currant tomatoes like the cutest little things you've ever seen? Here's one next to a black cherry tomato. They're tiny, tiny, tiny. And they're really sweet. They'll have a lot of flavor in that little guy. Very tedious to pick though. When my kids are in the garden and they're just desperate to pick something, I usually direct them to these little spoon tomatoes for no other reason than, you know, they're really only good for fresh eating and they fall through the holes in my hod. So I just eat them when I pick them. I don't know what else to do with them. I think these purple bumblebees may win the award for one of them. Oh goodness, I'm sitting here trying to pick this. That is definitely joined together. While I'm talking about them winning the award for being the prettiest tomato in the garden, they're like, well, here, take this. Isn't that neat? When it comes to favorite tomato, I have a really hard time picking one. I don't know what my favorite is. However, I tend to have, you know, favorites each year. It might not be my favorite of all time, but when I find one that I really, really like, I grow it again. And this year I tried, for the first time, Napa Chardonnay Blush. It's a yellow cherry, and they're not quite yellow. They're kind of like a light yellow color, whitish. These are so good. If I had to pick a favorite cherry this year, these would be it. They just have tons of flavor. I can't even really describe it. They're very sweet, but they still definitely have like a tomatoey kick. I wouldn't call them fruity. They're one of the best tomatoes I've ever tasted. And I don't say that lightly because I hate it that every time you read a description about tomatoes, it's like the best tomato I've ever tasted, and then you grow it and you're like, that wasn't even that good. I hope you don't feel that way about these. But I do think you should grow them for real. Give them a chance. I really, really like them. Last tomato, and then I swear we'll move on to something else. This is called Barry's Crazy Cherry, and it is a multiflora, which means its little clumps have a ton of fruit on them. And I think this is a really cool a really cool tomato. Like, look at that. I just think it's cool because, you know, you don't see that all the time. Well, my hod's out of commission for the rest of this because I got to get all of those up to the house. Since January, as I have started tomato plants, bought seeds, and all of that, people have asked me over and over, what are you going to do with all those tomatoes? And I've been like, eat them? Duh. Now I'm kind of wondering, like, what am I going to do with all those tomatoes? No, seriously, I'm going to eat them. I will probably be making salsa today and dehydrating all of those cherries. If you've never dehydrated cherry tomatoes, try it. It is so good. My kids eat them like candy. I cannot keep them. I seriously will dehydrate all of those cherry tomatoes, which is probably close to maybe like 16, you know, 10 to 16 ounces. I don't think that was more than a pound of them. It takes a lot of cherry tomatoes to make a pound. But I'll dehydrate all of those and they'll be gone by the end of the day when they come out of the dehydrator. Oh, noodle beans. Noodle beans are another thing that have earned their permanent place in my garden this year. They taste so good. They grow like crazy. They're just really cool. And I like them. Now, I went out of town this week. I went up to my brother's in Fayetteville and stayed the night. I was gone for 2 days. And while I was gone, several of these noodle beans really got too big to eat. I've noticed that they are best when they're like this. I'm gonna pick some of these before the pods start to bulge. Once they get to the point of bulging, they're really just not nearly as good texture-wise. They don't really seem much as like green beans anymore. So I left them to dry in order to save the seeds because I definitely want to grow these again. You can see I left all the ones hanging that were big in order to save them for seeds, and I did pick these. Since that started putting off beans 3 weeks ago or so, this is about the 8th time that I've picked this many beans off of those plants. At the bottom of those trellises, there are 5 beans planted on each side, and that's how many I'm getting out of it. So these are awesome. Definitely suggest those. I don't know what they're called if you buy them. Everywhere I've seen, I think just noodle beans. That's what I was given the seeds as, and I will absolutely be saving some of these and growing them again. Okay, let's take a look at the Kajori melons. Now, I did follow some advice and use some pantyhose to support these melons here on this trellis. I'm not entirely sure that they all needed it because some of them are still just hanging and they seem completely fine, but the heavier ones I decided to give a little support to. Now, it's interesting to me that this side of the trellis has just gotten explosively huge, whereas this side hasn't. These are both Kajori melons, both planted at the same exact time from the same packet of seeds. However, these are sharing a bed space with a bunch of dragon tongue bush beans, whereas all that's here is some holy basil and a couple of pepper plants. So maybe there's been some competition. These beans are just about done. I've got about one more picking from them. They're not setting any more flowers, and I'll be tearing them out. And we'll see if this side of the melon trellis catches up with the other side. Also, can we talk about how beautiful that sunflower is? The multi-headed sunflower. I didn't even know that was a thing. This is my first year to grow sunflowers, but right now I'm thinking I might go through and put some more seeds in just different places in the beds, because I did that on a whim, just throwing sunflowers in the corner of the raised beds, and I'm so glad I did. It's just so beautiful. Okay, the bed up by the front, we've got our atomic grape tomatoes. They are looking really close. All of the beautiful zinnias, and over there is a winter squash, which I can't even remember what kind it is, but it's going to grow up that and across the fence. These are some unpruned tomato plants that seem to be doing okay. I walked around there and took a look at them today. My pink beans, which are still going, still setting flowers and new beans. Tanya's pink potted bean. These have definitely earned a place in my garden from now on. Okay, my Tabasco peppers are covered in peppers, absolutely covered. And several of them are getting really close to being ready to pick. I'll probably pick those here in the next couple of days and start making some hot sauce, but I'm not gonna do it tonight because I don't have a whole lot of light left and I wanna get through the garden with you guys. Here are a couple of our okras. These are the Hill Country variety, and they are, they're doing wonderfully. And today I do believe I have enough okra to actually make a new recipe that I've been wanting to try. I came across this recipe for, it was like a crushed pecan mix, and the okra was battered in those crushed pecans and then put, I think they were fried at that point, so they were fried whole. And I'm an Arkansas girl. Fried okra is kind of a staple. We actually try not to eat a whole lot of fried foods, but when we do, okra is definitely on the menu. However, I wanted to try the recipe with pecans. I will link it down in my bio, and y'all will have to let me know what you think. Do y'all remember my cucamelon and tomato trellis? Well, the battle for dominance rages on, and I thought the cucamelons were going to win out because they have completely come over and begun taking over these tomatoes. However, the tomatoes aren't going out without a fight. They're sticking through the other side. And both of them are setting a tremendous amount of fruit, so I guess it's all right. We've got lots of cucamelons here, and by lots, I mean there are literally several hundred on just this one side of this trellis. They're getting to be a pretty good size. I think they get a good bit bigger than this though, so we're just leaving them for now and watching what they do. Me and the kids, everybody who comes down here grabs them and eats them off here, and there are easily, I don't know, I don't like exaggeration. I'm gonna stick with several hundred. I'm not gonna go ahead and say 1,000 because I think that's probably untrue. But I mean just right now, there are probably at least 400 or 500. That's not really several. Still a lot. That's a lot on this. And on the other side, the tomatoes, they're doing the dang thing. These are Amish pastes, and those are pink oxheart, and they seem completely undeterred by being, you know, attacked by cucamelons. Oh, and did you see my cute little table? My mom got me this planter a while ago. Chicken, hen and chicks, little garden pun for you. And I usually plant mint in that hog since mint is such a hog. And that's my punny little table, which I painted pink today, by the way. Just because we're friends, I think I should give you an insider tip that you might want to buy stock in pink spray paint, because there's a really good chance that I might get belligerent with this. I finished my table, painted the door. I did have a little spray paint left over, and I painted that little pink table, but I'm thinking of what else I could paint pink. Let's get back to the garden. I'm still harvesting gherkins from my Parisian pickling cucumbers. They're still putting off quite a lot of little cucumbers because I'm harvesting these at least every other day and getting still quite, you know, a couple handfuls. So far this season, we have put up about 3.5 gallons, I mean obviously broken up into quarts and pints, of bread and butter pickles. I've not started on dill pickles yet. I did a couple of half gallons of fermented pickles, which we're just eating out of the refrigerator now, but they're not canned. And what I typically will do is I'll do all of one kind. So I'll probably do one more round of doing about 8 quarts of bread and butter pickles. Then I'll move on and do all of our dills for the year. And it typically takes us a year to get through everything that I make. My Armenian white plant, cucumber plants are starting to struggle a little bit. Now, it's not alarming enough to completely pull them off. I will come and pull off everything on them that is dead. But because my cucumber plants seem to be petering out, they're not putting off nearly as many blossoms, I'm going to go ahead and this week and replant. We built a trellis this week. We did a video on an arch trellis, so I have an empty arch trellis. I was gonna wait to plant it until fall and plant it with peas. However, I think I can get one more round of cucumbers if I go ahead and plant that now, which will give me a whole nother round of making pickles and having fresh cucumbers for juice. Now, for a lot of people, trying to fight sickness is the best approach. I'm not sure what's going on with this plant. It has a few spots that could possibly be powdery mildew. It could have been a pest issue. For me, when it comes to organic gardening, we do have a really large garden. And so a lot of times, since I live in Arkansas and I have such a long growing season, I just kind of let things go and then replant them somewhere else. It gives me a break because I have been canning pickles a lot lately, and I would like to kind of take a break from that. Now my tomatoes are going to start putting on a whole lot. I can start canning tomatoes, and then if I replant the cucumbers now, in about a month and a half I'll start getting cucumbers again, and I can go back into preserving pickles. Remember, down here on the end I have a few more cucumber plants, and they are looking pretty loaded, and these are still looking quite healthy, whereas those other ones that are starting to look a little bit tired, they also started producing about 2.5 weeks before these did. They were planted earlier. Yep, time to make more pickles. I mentioned that my dragon tongue bush beans are getting to the end of their production. They're still putting on some blossoms, but not very many, and I really do feel like they're competing with these melons. They're getting just a little bit eaten by bugs. At this point, because I don't see just a whole lot of young beans on them, I'm gonna go ahead and pick them of what is left, and then I will probably tear these out before next week's tour. Oh, I missed some tomatoes. I think I'm pretty close to harvesting some of these melons because the stems are starting to dry up. They're not quite there yet, but both of these I noticed today. This is a banana melon, and it's changing color, and this stem's starting to get a little dry, and I think here in the next day or two we might be harvesting our first melons. This is another that I gave a little support to with some pantyhose. This was kind of a silly way to do it, but it was a silly shaped melon, so I didn't know what else to do. I just tied it around there so it wasn't putting a lot of stress on the stem. I am going to order my plastic produce bags though. I thought I was going to do the pantyhose only, but I decided I need the produce bags. So many of my calendula flowers have gone to seed. That is partially my fault for not picking them, but I did want some seeds. I still do have a few flowers here and there that I can pick. So after calendula flowers blossom, what they do is they dry up into these little pods. Oh, I just sent seeds everywhere. I'm gonna have calendula flowers coming up, and the seeds look like this. So I've been pulling these off, and so far I've just been throwing them out to the woods, planting them in other places. But today I am picking all of these and putting them in a bag, as well as any of the flowers that are remaining, which I'll stick those in the house to dry. I will always grow calendula. It's super easy, very beneficial for your skin, and it's just put off so much. I've got over a quart of dried flowers inside from just 4 plants here. I've already got other plants started that we're going to do another round of them, and the seeds are really easy to save. So I mean, you buy seeds once, you can grow calendula really indefinitely if you continue to save seeds from your plants. So here's a lemon cucumber. It's kind of just gone awry, and I guess I just let it. We pulled all of the worm ravaged kale and the winter crops out here. I've got some tomatoes that need to be staked up, and I'm going to be picking up some wood chips at like a local place where I can get them for free, and I'm going to be putting a thick layer of wood chips down in these beds to get ready for the fall planting. I've recently been reading a lot about Back to Eden gardening. I am going to be doing some videos about that, but I'm planning on implementing some of those practices even in my raised beds. I think we've always mulched with straw, and seeing a lot of benefit from it, but I really think wood chips are going to bring another level of benefit of mulching. So the places where we're tearing things out as they end, that's where we're gonna go ahead and start putting in wood chips, getting ready for the next season. And this fall, we will be covering our in-ground garden with wood chips and working on some additional gardening spaces on our farm. Pepper plants are starting to get quite heavy. These are anchos, so they're gonna get a little bigger. And I have started picking some jalapenos, which I'm gonna go ahead and pick these now because these are going in salsa tomorrow with all those tomatoes. Okay, the beans are still going wild on these trellises. We're still getting lots of green beans. These are Lima beans under here. Now these are called Corbaci sweet peppers. Look at how loaded these plants are. Now they're gonna get red, but I have been pulling them off and eating them fresh. They're really good, so I'm just gonna pick a few of these. I'm gonna saute them in the morning with some eggs for breakfast. Well guys, my camera is about to die, and I'm running out of light, as you can hear by all of the nighttime critters coming out. And this is my harvest for today from the garden. Okay guys, I'm out of time. It's getting to be night, but I usually bring you guys out here with me in the morning, which is one of my favorite times to be out in the garden, just because the day hasn't started yet. It's nice and cool. And right now, it is a muggy 90 degrees, humid Arkansas evening. The frogs, the cicadas, everything is just singing its song. And we are done with our weekly garden tour. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I am going to get my family, get our instruments, and we're gonna come down here, play some worship music, and just enjoy this beautiful space that we have. And we will see you guys next time.